Hey guys, what's up? It's Charlie here, and today we're going to be looking at 10 stubborn homeowners. Do you see yourself as a stubborn person? Well, here are some people who own houses and were asked to move. However, despite all the odds going against them, they refused to move and were very stubborn. Whether you agree with these homeowners or not, check them out because they're pretty funny. But before we get into it, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too? Coming in at number 10 we have Skyscraper Home. So this one takes place in Melbourne, Australia. If you look at the top of this image, it looks like a regular skyscraper. It's an incredibly high glass building and looks very modern, and it's home to many apartments and offices. But if you look down the building, you'll get a shock. That is because there's an old style house right at the bottom of the skyscraper. You may be thinking, how on earth did this happen? Well guys, it wasn't some weird architect trying something new out. Instead, this guy refused to sell his home in Melbourne, Australia. He's lived in the city and has had that home for many years. Most people in the neighborhood had their homes destroyed so the skyscraper could be built. But this guy refused to sell out despite them offering a ton of money. So now his classical building has to live amongst this very modern monstrosity. To be fair, the modern building does look pretty nice, but when you juxtapose it with this old building, it looks pretty weird. Next up is Half House. So this one takes place in Toronto, Canada. You may think if you're a stubborn homeowner, you always get your way. But this one goes to show that sometimes, even if you're stubborn, you won't exactly get what you want. One day back in the 1950s, a resident of a Toronto duplex refused to sell. However, he didn't own the entire building. It was a terraced building, meaning that his house connects to another one, and his neighbor did sell. So instead of the apartment block not being built, they simply cut this guy's house in half. And now in Toronto, this guy lives in a half house. This is located on St. Patrick Street in downtown Toronto. It looks like a Photoshop of a house being cut in half, but this is 100% real. Next up is Saloon Apartment. So we've already covered that a lot of the time apartments want to be built in cities, and they offer the current residents a ton of money to move out. That's so they can destroy their homes and make their apartments. But one saloon, which had been around for ages, refused to sell. So to get around this, the apartment simply had to build around them. I have to say this is a pretty smart business move. Imagine all the new business they'll get thanks to these apartments. Who knows, with all the new customers, maybe this saloon will make more money by not selling. This is located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I assume this saloon's business is soon gonna be booming. And I have to say this is a pretty cute saloon. Next up is Highway Home. So this house located in China is a bit different. It's located in the Zhejiang province. Now normally when it comes to these stubborn homeowners, it's when people don't want to sell their house to apartment complexes. But in this case, the government wanted to build a brand new highway. They went ahead with building the highway and everyone sold out to the government. But one elderly couple refused to allow their house to be demolished. So now it's the only building left standing on the road. This went viral on the internet in 2012 back when this happened, and ever since it's become a symbol of resistance against developers. Do you guys think this elderly couple were doing the right thing, or were they causing a disturbance? I have to say they are very stubborn, but maybe for good reasons. It's pretty messed up to kick somebody out of their house to build a road, so I have to say props to these guys. Next up is Up. So we've all seen the Disney movie Up, and after the movie, many people have tried to recreate this house with balloons on in real life. But did you know that the Up house is based on a real thing? A few years back in 2006, Edith Macefield turned down $1 million to sell her house. A development company in Seattle wanted to buy her home to make a 5-story project. But the 84-year-old didn't want to sell her 100-year-old farmhouse. Instead, she turned down the $1 million. As you can see, the house looks identical to the Up house. Sadly, Edith is no longer with us, but her house is, and other people have bought it to protect it. Next up is World's Thinnest Home. So a few years back, a Polish architect was walking around a Jewish ghetto in Warsaw, Poland. He then saw what he called an appealing piece of space between two apartment buildings. He says he fell in love with the space and decided to make a link. The 39-year-old architect then built the world's thinnest home. You may think this is just a storage area or an alleyway, but no, this guy actually lives there and developed it. And although it doesn't look like much on the outside, inside it looks incredibly stylish. It's very compact, and believe it or not, he was able to fit many rooms into this tiny, tiny home. But guys, answer in the comments, would you want to live in the world's thinnest home? Next up is House on the Hill. So you may have seen a house on a hill before, but what about a house on a hill in the middle of a construction site? This one takes place in China again. Wow, it seems like China has a lot of stubborn homeowners. Anyway, one day developers wanted to develop an entire neighborhood. Every single person in the neighborhood sold out to them except this couple. The owners of this house decided not to sell out, so instead the developers decided to dig around the house. It's not only the guy's house though, it's also his shop. Again, this is another business which should be booming after the development takes place. Just imagine all the customers that will come by to this shop. The only downside is his shop's not going to get any business unless people walk up the hill. And I doubt anyone's going to walk into a building site up this hill just to go to this guy's shop. Next up is another highway house. So we've already seen one highway house on this list, but it turns out there's more than just one highway house in the world. And believe it or not, this is yet another house in China. This house is located in Luoyang, China. When the Chinese government decided to make a 4-lane highway down the middle of her road, she decided not to sell. So instead, they simply built the road around her home. Do you think this is a good idea or not? It must be pretty annoying for any motorists having to go around her home. But do you guys think this is fair enough or not? The traffic seems to be flowing pretty well, but it sure must be strange for her living in the middle of a highway. Next up is Airport Farm. So this one takes place in Japan. We've had houses in the middle of roads, building sites, and apartment developments. But what about a house in the middle of a giant airport? Well, this isn't just a house, but a farm and a house. One day a Japanese airport was being built, but it had some problems with landowners. As you can see from the photos, there's a huge farm in the middle of this airport. The owners of this farm fought the government for 39 years to keep their farm, and they won. The only downside is, now these guys have to have planes flying right over their farm all day long. I'm not sure how these guys get any sleep with the roar of airplane engines over their homes. But if you're stubborn enough, you'll do anything to keep your land. Next up is underground home. So the properties on this list have all been different, but the one thing they all have in common is that they're above ground. This house, however, isn't. This is what is referred to as a nail house. It sits in the middle of the road in China. In 2015, the owner of the house didn't reach an agreement with the local authority. Every other house in the area was demolished to build this road, except this one. So now cars and pedestrians have to go around this nail house. It's called a nail house because it sticks out of the ground. But to be honest, I'm not sure why the government didn't just build a bridge over this house. One thing they did do, however, was sink the house as the road had to be built above it. I feel bad for these guys who now have to live underground, but at least they got to keep their land. Next up is harsh housing. So a lot of the time being stubborn makes you win, but here's one instance of people being stubborn and developers making their lives terrible. The tenants of this apartment building in Kunming, China didn't want to move out. So instead, contractors got creative and decided to find a way to get them out. They dug a ditch and made a moat to force this family out. This is because the contractors made it so these people couldn't even get out of their house without getting all dirty and muddy. This meant they couldn't go to work or do anything and were pretty much arrested in their own home. Unfortunately, this was the final straw and they were forced out by the contractors. I feel very bad for these stubborn homeowners. But who do you think was in the right here, the contractors or the homeowners? Check out the poll in the top right corner to vote for the most stubborn homeowner on this list. If you guys want more amazing videos, check out my second channel. There'll be a link to that on screen in a moment. But as always, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.